What lessons should the West or NATO or whatever, whoever, be taking from Ukraine? Because at this point, they are more innovative or leading the pack, so to speak, in military techniques than a lot of Western Europe is, that's for sure. And maybe parts of Eastern Europe, like Poland, not so much because they know the threat that Putin poses. But what lessons should the West be doing? Germany's waking up. Europe seems to be waking up. But, what sort of principles should people be taking mostly from Ukraine, apart from resistance and unrelenting defense?
Well, I think probably the biggest takeaway here is you need to have a robust Air Force, because I know people want to talk about drones and stuff like that, but the fact is that Russia can launch as many drones as they want. Let's say they went to war with NATO. Russia can launch as many drones as they want, but they're going to do it hungry and without any generator fuel, right? To charge those drones. They might get a couple of drones off, and then they're not going to be able to recharge these things. The one thing that, to go into a different area of conflict here, you look at Israel versus Iran. Why was Israel able to defeat Iran? Well, because they had long-range precision fires. They were using aircraft to launch missiles or drop bombs. And I think the reason that the conflict has kind of stagnated, or why Russia couldn't really execute their war plans to full effect, was that deconfliction is hard. And if your Air Force isn't quite good enough, if you don't own the skies, then eventually you're going to get into this grinding World War I type battle. So I think the one thing that needs to be taken away is not we need more drones. It's we need more air power, better air power, long-range air power that can strike logistics, that can allow for close air support so that units can maneuver on the ground to end a conflict quickly. Because if you can't end that conflict quickly, then you're going to get into this grinding fight. I think that's the biggest takeaway. It's not we need more drones. Drones are going to be a thing, absolutely. But I think a lot of this goes back to air power. Do you own the air? And even more than that, do you own space? Because the U.S. Space Force was created to actively deny our adversaries the domain of space. And that's a pretty darned important mission for the U.S. Space Force. So I think that's probably the biggest takeaway, is that nations need air power. And without that, you better hope you're fighting another nation without air power, because you're going to be in this grinding conflict for years.
Yeah, I mean, astropolitics is something I've looked at a bit, and it's very fascinating to me. We've had some very interesting conversations about China's growing. I mean, India, obviously, as well, with there's lots of countries that you wouldn't necessarily think about on a terrestrial sense, but in the space, they're actually quite ahead of the game. Turkey, with its base in Mogadishu in Somalia, for example, which is really random. Anyway, fun fact. But on China and Russia, you made a video about a recent trip and how Russians are training the Chinese. And I really wanted to learn more about that.
That wasn't me. That was, RUSI, the Royal
United Services Institute.
Yeah. They came up with this, they broke this news. And this news came from a hacker group. Now, normally I would kind of ignore anything a hacker group comes up with, but if RUSI vetted it, then it's probably okay. And one interesting thing here is that China knows that it has to perform some kind of air assault onto Taiwan because people are going to get slaughtered in the water. So they need to do what we call JADO, Joint All-Domain Operations. That means cyber payloads. That means air assault envelopment or airborne envelopment. That means landing on the beaches. That means a blockade. It means having submarines under the water. And it means drones as well. So they need to perform that. And one thing that China doesn't really know how to do, it's battalion, brigade level airborne operations. They do have airborne units. They do jump. But Russia just has more experience in airborne air assault operations. And that's something that China was trying to get more experience with. And they reached out to Russia and they said, hey, can you train us on this? And they bought some Russian equipment. And this was in 2003, I guess, kind of before the equipment became a lot more precious than it is now. But seems like a win-win, right? Russia gets hard currency, China gets experience, everybody wins. Now, whether or not they're still doing that is unknown, right? We don't know exactly what Russia is doing in China right now, but as of 2 years ago, it certainly seems like they were training the Chinese in how to do airborne operations.